fellow collectors, and welcome to Long's Toys. Today we are taking a look at these MegaConstrux Masters of the Universe Skeletor head playsets. Basically, they have these Skeletor head plastic pieces here that have smaller sets inside, and you can see they come in 3 different variations. So this first one here is TrapJaw Laser Cannon. This one is Fisto Cliff Climber. And this one is HeMan Jet Sled. So if you can see on the side here, basically you open up the skull, take the pieces out, and then you kind of build a tiny little play set that comes with one figure and pretty much one vehicle for most of these. So I think they're neat. They're about $10 a piece, which I think is fairly reasonable. I found them at Walmart. That's where I picked them up. I think it's kind of funny. You can see 76, 77, 78. They're not numbered. That's just the amount of pieces they have. It's just kind of coincidental and hilarious that, you know, they go up in increments of 1, 76, 77, 78. Because at first I thought they were numbered, and I thought, oh, you know what, there's random numbers to choose. And then I realized it's just the part count. So, but they look like fun little sets. So I'm going to go ahead, open these up, build them, and then we'll take a look at each one individually. So we'll take a look at each of these individually. First up, we'll start with the TrapJaw Laser Cannon. We'll take a look at the figure that is included. So this is TrapJaw, and he is done in the kind of alternate color scheme that's kind of become prevalent for him. This is definitely not his normal color scheme, but I believe the normal TrapJaw is going to be available in a set coming up. So it's kind of nice that they want to give you some variety here instead of just giving you a figure you may get a duplicate of later on. They wanted to give us kind of the alternate color scheme for him, which I really appreciate that. I think that's nice to do. Get some different color motifs, color palettes for these characters. I think that's pretty great. So you can see he does have the opening jaw. The head is really tight on this ball joint, but you can move it around. You can see the jaw opens and closes. The mouth underneath looks kind of weird, I'll be honest. But the jaw does close up like that. That looks pretty good. So you already saw the ball joint for the head. You have a hinge and swivel here in the shoulder. You have a hinge and rotation here in the elbow. And then you have a rotation in the wrist. You have a small amount of rotation in the waist that does not go all the way around. There's kind of, when you connect it, there's kind of a track that the peg goes into so that it hits a wall and it only does that much. Then you have a ball joint in the hip, and then you have a 90 degree, well, not quite 90 degree bend in the knee there. Now for the metallic arm, he does have the hinge and rotation in the shoulder, but he does not have a bend in the elbow. So that is a solid arm piece. He does not have a bend in the elbow there, but he does have a rotation here, and he does come with some additional possibilities. So you can see we have the gun right there. If we pop that off, he's got a kind of grabber claw attachment, which I believe I have upside down. There we go. He's got a hook hand. And then he's also got what I'm assuming is a fly swatter. I'm not really sure. Maybe a spatula. Maybe he's grilling. Is he making burgers for everybody? I don't know. That's a weird attachment. But I do like the others. It's not that I don't like the spatula. I just think it's weird. But the gun is definitely my favorite. Now, he does have these like soft rubber hooks on his belt. So that I guess you can put these other attachments on there. But they're not super easy to get in there. Now, again, it is kind of soft rubber, so you should be able to get it in there. I'm not going to mess with it too much. But the other thing is they're going to hang really low and take up a lot of space. The original toy, and I believe even the Origins, they had kind of little hooks, and then the hook would just kind of easily slip in that space. So not really sure why they got away from that, but maybe I can get the hook hand one in here fairly easily. Yeah, that's not too bad. So you could do something like that. So you have the capability of storing them in there. It's just not super easy to do, but that belt is completely made of like a soft rubber plastic there, so that you can get them in there. So pretty cool little figure here. He also has the ring on the top of his head. So if you wanted to feed a rope through there and have him do kind of a zip line situation, you could do that as well. So pretty cool. I like this TrapJaw, and I'm happy that they gave us the alternate color scheme. and definitely has a ton of arm attachments. Now, if we move on to the playset here, you can see that there is a tiny laser cannon, very similar to the one that is mounted on Castle Grayskull, and I'm going to attempt to remove this without, there we go, taking it apart. It has a swivel here, as you can see, and then the handles can kind of move around a little bit. But there is a kind of friction fire missile. You can see the translucent piece right here. If you press this down, that will fire out, and it fires pretty well, I have to say. It really does have some gusto to it. But it also has the two just kind of brick-built cannons here to simulate, you know, the laser fire, and then you have that one in the middle to actually fire something out. So that's pretty cool. I think they did a good job with that. And it's a quick little build. There's not too much going on with that, so I'm going to go ahead and try to remember where this actually goes. That'll do. Now, if we spin around to the back, there is actually a little kind of computer panel. I don't know what exactly you'd call it, but you can lift this whole section out. And you can see it's got kind of a cool screen here. So some kind of monitoring system or something. And then that just pegs into this space right here. So very simple. But it's kind of neat. I mean, the way this all comes packaged inside, if you wanted to, you could probably take this all off. Let me see if I can get this to come off again. There we go. This piece in the middle always wants to fall off, but you can easily pop it back on. And then this is just kind of connected by one panel right there, so you could take that off. And then you could probably put everything back inside here. And then you could close this back up. And how these come is this is connected on the back here like this. And then you could probably just put this on here or something. So if you wanted to kind of use this as like a storage case, you could do that as well. So it's kind of a storage case slash playset. And then you just take this back out, connect this on here, and then connect this back underneath here. And then we just attach everything back on like so. So there you go. I think that's kind of neat. I like having the kind of, with the back open, I like having the computer terminal inside, so it's kind of like a small cave with an outlook that has a cannon on it. So I think that's kind of neat. So all in all, I think this is a pretty cool little playset. It's fairly basic, but I mean, for the cost, I think that the amount of pieces you get is pretty fair, and I like the little setup with the computer terminal and the cannon. Next up, we have Fisto's Cliff Climb, and if I'm not mistaken, this was a toy in the original line, or this is at least a reference to something similar, maybe not of the same exact name, but you can see that he's got this kind of harness piece that has the ability to have pieces pegged onto the front and the back, and they build this kind of little backpack for him, and this little window piece can kind of lift up. You can see his head under there. It just kind of closes down like that. It has this winch on the top that has, you know, rope with a hook. Now, unfortunately, the way this is done, technically it can spin, but that's not really the way you wind it up. It would have been nice if there was some kind of mechanism that you could easily kind of spin this to roll it up. Instead, you just kind of wind it around, and the thing is, there's no way to like hook it closed. So a lot of times when I do this, it just spins around like that. I wish there was somewhere where once it's done, you had like an obvious place to attach the hook or something. You could try to clip it in here or something like this. There's kind of this little section back here, but it's not really working too well. I just wish there was an obvious place that you could affix the hook so that this would stay wound up, but it doesn't work all that great. And then he's got these weird kind of, you know, boot things. I guess you could flip these up if you want, but I think they're meant to stay down. Like there's supposed to be some kind of climbing shoes. I'm not 100% sure. If you prefer, you can take this completely off. All you have to do is pop off the head, which is a little easier said than done. And unfortunately, this window piece, this is supposed to move. These two pieces here are supposed to swivel, but unfortunately, more times than not, when you try to move this, you just end up breaking this piece off. And I don't want to say breaking it because it just easily pegs back on, but when you try to move this, it's very tight, so it, you know, more often than not, that just happens. So it's not great, but you can take the harness completely off if you prefer. It just slides up over top, and then you can take the boots off, and then pop the head back on if you just want kind of like a normal Fisto figure. And he looks pretty good. As a figure, I think he looks really good. They did a nice job with the head sculpt, and it's got pretty much all the same articulation as the TrapJaw. We have a ball joint there. We have the hinge and the swivel in both the shoulder and elbow. You have a swivel at the wrist. You have that limited torso swivel, ball joint in the hip, and then like 45-degree bend, something like that in the knee. But he's got the giant metal fist, as you can see, which works really well. And that's just a hinge. He basically has the same elbow joint, but he has no wrist joint, and there's no swivel below the elbow. So, but it still looks pretty cool. I like the giant fist. I think they did a good job with that. He's pretty cool. So I'm not a huge fan of the cliff climb. It's okay, but it's not my favorite. Unfortunately, there's not really much else going on with this thing if you take that out of the equation. You have a little weapons rack over here. I do like this kind of, I'm not sure if it's supposed to be a laser or a drill. I feel like it's probably a drill, and if he's climbing, that would kind of make sense to me that it's a drill. So I do kind of like the look of this weapon. I think that's kind of cool. Otherwise, just kind of standard weapons. You have a mace, a sword, a staff. I really do like the look of this Skeletor head, though. I think this green with the red eyes looks really sharp. Nothing going on in the back here. You do have this kind of little crystal with little, I'm not quite exactly sure what this is supposed to be. It's like a globe on a pedestal here, but you're supposed to take this top part off, and then you're supposed to, they give you this other piece here, if I can bring it in, and I think this is supposed to, I don't remember how this is supposed to go. Maybe I have this on backwards. It's supposed to become, let me use the tool for separating these pieces, as it does work pretty well, I have to say. Maybe it's supposed to go in the bottom here, and then I think you're supposed to affix this like this, and then he's supposed to hold it as like a melee weapon. I don't know. The directions just show you doing that. I think that's weird, but whatever. If you want to, there you go. You have a melee weapon option. Otherwise, I'm just going to put this back up here. I do kind of like the look of this like little pedestal, you know, crystal area. It kind of reminds me of the thing that's like in the attic of Castle Grayskull, so maybe that's what they were going for. But yeah, there's not too much going on with this one. I mean, as far as the playset goes, it's just the skull here with this flat area with the weapons rack, and then the cliff climb. Obviously, the cliff climb is the big draw for this set, but I don't know. I just don't think it's that great. It's okay. It's not terrible. And I do like how they kind of have a simulated wince here on the front. I just wish there was some way, like you can swivel this around, so that's nice. But I wish there was a better way that once you wind this up, it would stay wound up until you want it to, you know, unfurl. Like I wish there was a way that this, like you can spin it, but it doesn't really help your situation at all because there's nothing on the other side to keep it in place, if that makes sense. And this kind of screen covering thing just doesn't work all that well, and it comes apart very easily. So this is kind of meh. I do like Fisto. I think he looks great. And I do like the color scheme of this skull. But this one is probably my least favorite of the three. And last but certainly not least, we have the HeMan Jet Sled. So first off, we have our He-Man figure, who's pretty similar to most of the He-Man figures you probably already have. He does have a blue harness, though, which I think looks pretty sharp. And it does have a kind of rubber section there that can hold the sword, which we'll take a look at in a moment. Otherwise, he's got pretty much the same articulation as all the other figures. But I do like the blue harness. I think that looks pretty good. If we zoom out here, we have a gold skull, which I think is a pretty cool motif for Skeletor. I think that looks pretty sharp with the black hood. Come around to the back, not too much going on in here, but they do have a clip for the power sword. So you can just take that off and then give it to He-Man to hold. And that clips right into his hand very simply. Or like I was talking about earlier, you can store it on the back here. You just have to kind of push it through the little rubber loop, and then he can have that on his back. Now, as far as the playset goes, there's really not too much going on with this. They put a couple of rocks over here in this field. The big draw is the fact that this thing spins around, so you can simulate flying, or you can just go ahead and take this off of here, It's very tight though, so be careful you don't break the peg off. But this piece just clips back on here. Apparently that came off at the... Oh, that just broke. That just broke. So there you go. Wow. So be wary, because that just broke. That was the spinning mechanism. So if you take a look here, there is a little clip, and there was this piece of plastic that went on this side of it. That just broke off of there. And that clipped into this so that it would spin around. Now, I'll be honest with you, this will probably still work. Yeah, I mean, because it's got half the peg and it's just going to have gravity kind of keep it in place. So it's not a big deal. But yeah, that just broke. So be careful with that. But like I was saying, let's get back to the actual jet sled. It looks kind of neat. It looks like a ski-doo or a jet ski, or I mean, I guess it is called it's called jet sled technically on the packaging, but it looks like a watercraft in my opinion. But I do like the design. I mean, I think the red paint looks pretty good. The blue looks good. And you can push this most of the way down. It can't go all the way down. You can see that it starts to unclip. I mean, you can kind of force it if you want it to go all the way down. Yeah, I guess it will. It's just that when you start to get to a certain, angle, it starts to want to pop that out, but you can still make it work. And then you can see that there's kind of footholds right here, so you just kind of attach the feet right here. Now, I will say, when you attach him on here, the area that he's supposed to hold on to on the front looks a little too tall. So even when you kind of bring it down for him to hold on to, I feel like they could have shortened this by 1. I feel like they could have just done, you can see it's 5 studs in length. It could have been 4, and I feel like that would have been a little bit better. But again, not a huge problem. But I like it. It's a fun little vehicle. I think it has a nice color scheme. The gray or silver, the blue and the red all work really well together. So I think all in all, it's a really cool little vehicle. But yeah, there's really not too much to this set besides that. You can kind of clip it onto the top here, and then you can simulate it flying around. This little field with the rocks in it is really not exciting whatsoever, but you could go ahead, take this off, and then you could put everything easily inside here. Well, you'd have to take him off and I guess probably close this down for storage. But you could easily put all this in there. You might have to take this apart if you wanted to fit it inside, but you could easily just take that off like that. I do like the way that they click on the back there and close up. I think that's pretty cool. And then this clips back on here. There we go. I still can't believe that this piece broke off. Luckily, it's not too big of a deal because, like I said, it will kind of, for the most part, stay in there as I flip it around. It should, for the most part, stay in there. So I gotta be honest, these are only okay. I will say one thing, the price is right. They're definitely not too expensive. Coming in at $10 a skull, I really think what you get is fairly decent. You get a figure, which usually the figures are around $5 themselves. So considering you get the big plastic skull with the kind of, playset piece and then some kind of weapon or accessory or vehicle or something like that, I think the price is fair. I really do think $10 is a fair price. I think that probably the TrapJaw laser cannon one is my favorite because this is the one that I feel like works the most as a playset. I think the fact that it has the laser cannon and the little computer terminal kind of makes it feel like a little outpost. Maybe he's stationed somewhere and he's got some way to like run surveillance or spy on the enemy, and then he's got a laser cannon for defense. So this kind of feels like a complete playset and actually could feel like a little outpost or something like that. Next up, I think the He-Man one is probably second best. I do like the little vehicle. There's not much to it, but I think it's fun, and it's easily something you could just take from this and use with other playsets that you have, or just, having battles with different vehicles, or you want to set up a scene with different vehicles or something like that. I think this is kind of a cool little vehicle. There's really not too much else to the rest of the playset. It's literally just this spinner thing that already broke on me, and then this field with just 3 stones in it. So this is not really that great. But if someone was like, hey, for $10 you can have a figure in this little vehicle, I think that's fair, honestly. Like I said, with the figures being $5 on their own, you're paying a couple bucks for this little vehicle. I think that's fine. And then you can just use the skull as kind of a storage device to carry them around easily. So I think that one's okay. Unfortunately, the one I wanted to like the most, the Fisto one, or Fisto, however, it's like Kit Fisto from Star Wars all over again. I can never decide how I'm supposed to pronounce it. In any case, I wanted to like this one the most because this is the first Fisto figure that I'm getting, because he did show up in the series of figures, like the second wave of just the figure packs. I just haven't gotten to them yet. And I do like the character. I think, and the figure is good. I think the big giant fist works. I think he doesn't really suffer too much articulation loss from it. The figure itself, I think, is fine. This little climbing apparatus, it's okay. It's not great. I would say it's closer to bad than good, but it's not absolutely terrible. There's just lots of things like I would fix the fact of how you store the rope on here. There's not really a great way to wind it up. It doesn't want to stay once you do wind it up. It just tries to fly off. So that's not really that great. The way this is supposed to move, I don't think is that great. It just kind of lends to pieces coming off. Now again, you can just put it right back together, so it's not a big deal. So I like the figure. I don't think this is that great. And then you have the kind of weird, I guess climbing shoes. They're okay. I mean, they pop on easy enough, so there's nothing terrible about them either. Just kind of mediocre, in my opinion. Just the least successful with what they were trying to do. This climbing thing just isn't that great. And then the rest of the playset is literally just a weapons rack. I do really like the color scheme of this Skeletor skull. I think the green with the red eyes looks really cool. I wish that glowed in the dark because it looks like it should. But yeah, just overall, this one I think was the biggest letdown. It just didn't really work for what they were going for, in my opinion. But again, that's not to say that any of these are terrible. I don't hate any of them. I just think some are more successful than others. I definitely think TrapJaw is the most successful as a mini playset. The others I think are, maybe like this one has a good vehicle, but it's not really that great of a playset. This one is not really a great playset or a great vehicle / accessory. So unfortunately, that's why it kind of scores the lowest for me. But again, at $10, I think the price is fair. I think if you want the Fisto figure and you like the color of this Skeletor skull for $10, I still don't think you'll be let down. I just think some are better than others. But if these were like $15, $20, I would say no, don't bother with them at all. I would think that would be ridiculous. But at $10 a piece, I think if you pick it up, you probably won't be incredibly impressed. You might be a little underwhelmed, but you won't regret your purchase. I think if you're just trying to, get some extra figures, or maybe get some figure variants, or get some extra accessories or small vehicles, this is great. This is like little bolster packs to kind of add to your collection. You're not really buying it for the playset because, let's be honest, the skull is not that great of a playset. I'm also kind of bummed that they just did Skeletor 3 times, even though Skeletor does not appear in any one of these. I think it would have been more fun to mix it up. And I know they would have had to do, 3 different molds or however many of these they intend to do instead of just doing one mold and using it 3 times. Obviously, that's more cost effective. But I just think it would have been more fun to switch it up and do some different heads as a way to let you know what's inside. Like, oh, I'm grabbing the He-Man head. Or even if they just did He-Man and Skeletor. I don't know. Maybe they tried a He-Man head and it looked too unnatural. I don't know. Maybe they thought because Skeletor has such a unique head that works on its own as a tiny little playset box. I don't know. I don't know how these things get planned out. But I was a little bummed when it was just the same one repainted 3 times. But it is what it is. In my mind, it's more of a storage case than a playset, and you're really just buying these for the contents inside, which, range from good to eh. So let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks so much for watching.